So good afternoon again, and welcome to our high school mentor session. We have presenters Greta and Casey, and they're going to be talking about applying for colleges and applying for scholarships. I think Greta will go first, a little more focused on the colleges, and then Casey will talk about scholarships. So just a couple quick announcements about extra credit, because I always have students wondering, you are eligible for extra credit for attending. And so what you'll do after the session is over, email the teacher you would like to see the extra credit in, and let them know you attended today's session, and they'll go in. We've got a shared Google Doc that lists those who attended and mark you off. And you don't have to use it right away. If you want to wait till it gets closer to the end of the quarter, that's fine. But between interest ed sessions and mentor sessions, we do ask you just to use one extra credit opportunity per class. So if you go to today's session, you go to tomorrow's interest ed, we ask that you don't email me and say, Mrs. Nedved, I would like extra credit in geometry for both these sessions. We've got to split them off classes. So that's kind of the little bit of a rule we've got. But other than that, you're welcome to use it, and the amount of extra credit will vary based on the teacher, and that's kind of up to them. But again, just a reminder, email that teacher. I always have students email me, and if you want to use it in my class, that's great. If not, go right to that teacher. They will see, like I said, we've got a shared doc that shows who's there, so they know that you were actually here. So I list all of you down. If any time throughout the session you do have a question for either of our presenters, go ahead and type it in the questions box. I'm still the only one who sees the questions box, but I will relay it to them at the end when we go over some questions and answers. Okay, any questions before we go ahead and jump in? All right, well, I'll turn it over to Greta, and like I said, throw those questions out in the comments box as we go, and we'll address them at the end. Thanks so much.
Awesome. So I'm a senior this year, and I applied to a bunch of colleges. Most of them were East Coast colleges, and it's a big process, it really is, but it's not as scary as it sounds. So I broke it down into a couple important steps for you guys, just to kind of simplify it. And the first place is where to start. So you need to think about what colleges you're going to apply to. If you're going to be applying early or regular decision. So I applied regular decision to all of my colleges because I didn't have the ACT scores that I wanted, so I needed that extra time to take another ACT test before I applied to colleges. What the application deadlines are, because my application deadlines ranged from December 31st to February 15th. So they were all a little different. It's really important to know when the applications are due. And then also if there's an interview with your application. So I have, I think, 5 colleges that I applied to where I actually needed to do an interview after the application process. And some of them, like I applied to Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And with that college, my interview was before I submitted my application, whereas all my other interviews were after I submitted my application. So that's just something to be aware of. And then a little bit about the applications. Most colleges use a holistic review, so that means that no one portion of your application is more important than the other. For example, your grades in school aren't more important than your ACT scores, and it's not more important than your college essay, and it's not more important than your extracurricular activities. They're all kind of judged on a level playing field. So make sure that even if one part of your application might seem a little weak, the rest of it's strong, apply anyways. Most institutions are mead blind, so really apply for financial aid. Most institutions aren't gonna look at any of your finances to base it on whether or not you're gonna get into the college. And then apply, if you have a school that you think is a reach school. I applied to a bunch of schools that I may or may not get into, but apply anyway, it doesn't hurt. And also make sure you apply to some safety schools. You can't only apply to schools that you don't know if you're going to get into or not, because you want to get into college. So make sure that you have a couple schools that you know you can get into that are there just in case. And then there's a couple different platforms that colleges use. most of my applications were on the Common App, but there's also the Pioneer app, and then there's a bunch of private applications. So like Georgetown was a private application. Theirs was completely separate. And the rest of my colleges that I applied to, I could complete on the Common App. So all like the main application was the exact same, so I only had to do it once. I didn't have to do it for every single school I applied to, which was really nice. And then you have your ACT and your SAT. So most colleges, there are a few that don't need your test scores, but most colleges will want to see your ACT, your SAT, or both test scores. I personally preferred the ACT to the SAT. I did a lot better on my ACT than my SAT. I took them both a couple times. I would suggest taking both of them, finding which one you like better, and then focusing on that one. You're going to want to make sure that you take it with enough time so that you're not struggling when you're trying to turn in all your applications to also try and get the right test scores. And then writing, this is for your personal essay, and your personal essay is a big part of your college application. I would start writing it a couple months in advance. I had 3 that I was working on, and I changed them a lot from when I started to when I finished. And so you want to get an early start on that and find as many people as you can to review your essay, because the more opinions you get, the better it's going to be. You don't necessarily have to take everyone's opinions and corrections and apply them to your essay, but there might be something someone says that you're like, oh yeah, that actually is a really good idea. But the biggest thing about your essay is the topic, and that seems to be like the scariest part of it. It was kind of daunting for me because you get one essay, right? This is your opportunity to really speak directly to the colleges about you. It's not just facts and I was a part of this club and I got these grades. It's a much more personal look into who you are. So some topic ideas to think about is something that's important to you, a quality or a couple qualities that you want colleges to know you have, a story or life experience that exhibits those qualities, and then edit it. Make sure you go through and edit it a bunch of times, because those like simple grammatical mistakes don't look good on your personal essay. And this, a couple slides back, is an example of my personal essay, but that's kind of blurry. So I think I might just pull up on my Word, because there you go. So mine is about dog sledding. I race sled dogs, and so that was something that I thought would be unique to me. And then in my essay, I talk about a time when we went dog sledding and my sled crashed, and we were like going down this really steep hill, so I was getting drugged down the hill by my dogs. And I had to stop them, but it was a really big team, so I couldn't like hold them back with my body weight or strength. And so I had to get to the snow hook, which was on the complete opposite side of the sled than I was. So I had to like climb my way from my point on the sled to the snow hook and stick it in the ground to stop the team. And it's like a short, easy to tell story, but in it I talked about how dog sledding, like life, is you have to expect the unexpected and be prepared for anything. So in my essay, I'm exhibiting my quality to adapt to any circumstance and think on my feet and that kind of stuff. So it's like a fun, intriguing story, but it also like sneaks in a couple traits that I would want colleges to know that I have. And this was just one I wrote. I wrote 3 different essays. One of them was about leadership, and then 2 of them were about dog sledding, and that one was the one that I picked. So then in your applications, you're also going to have supplement essays. And these are like little things that can be, I had anything from what's your favorite word or phrase to what's your favorite quote and how does it describe why you want to go to this college. And so what I did when I found out that I had like a bunch of supplement essays to write for each college is I made a list of everything I definitely wanted to include in my application, from leadership experience to different clubs and activities and community service, and I ranked them from most important to least important. So that way, when I had to write my supplement essays, I made sure that I was writing my supplement essays about the most important traits that I wanted the colleges to see. And then a lot of the colleges also had prompts that were like slightly different, but I could still use the same essay for a bunch of them. So there was a couple essays that I used on almost every single one of my college applications. But in the end, I had over 30 pages of college essays or supplement essays after I did all my applications. So it was a lot of writing, but it's all like reflective writing. So I didn't think that it was too hard because you're just kind of writing about yourself and your own experiences. So you have all the knowledge you need already. You just need to figure out how to put it into a cohesive and easy to read piece. Then you have your extracurricular activities. And on the Common App, I know they give you like 10 spaces to put in your extracurricular activities. So if you do a lot of extracurricular activities, like I did, you have to pick the ones that are most important to you. And then you also have to be able to summarize them in like 7 words. So that was more difficult because that's not personal. It's very like black and white. Like I was a member of 4-H, and in 4-H I did leadership. You can't really elaborate on that. You can't elaborate on what it's taught you or what it means to you or anything like that. It's just facts, basically. So you want to, so like 4-H was something that was big for me, and I did a lot of leadership stuff through 4-H. So I mentioned it in my extracurricular activities, but I also made sure to highlight it in a couple other spots in my applications where I could express like what it's taught me and why it was important to me more. Because in the extracurricular portion, you won't have that opportunity. But you can include anything from community service, leadership, sports teams, church groups, school organizations, like anything that you do, you can add as an extracurricular activity. And the more of them that you do, it's not necessarily better or worse, because a lot of colleges, while they want you to be a well-rounded student, they want you to excel at one thing and do that one thing really well. So even though you might have 20 extracurricular activities, if you do really well in like 5 of them and the rest of them are just kind of there, that's fine. Or if you only do 5 extracurricular activities but you do really well in all of those, like that's perfect. You don't need to worry about having to fill in every space for extracurricular activities. And then financial aid. This one, don't wait till the last minute because it's not necessarily easy to do. It's quite time intensive and you definitely need your parents. Make sure you don't miss your deadlines, because while it's not necessarily the end of the world if you miss them, it's going to take the colleges a lot longer to process your applications. And give your parents plenty of pre-advanced warning, because it really, like my dad, when he was filling out our financial aid, he had to call our bookkeeper like 5 times to just figure out what the questions meant. So definitely fill it out, because it's you're going to want, or at least I know I wanted to get financial aid from the colleges that I was applying to, so it's super important that way. And then just make sure you give yourself plenty of time. Letters of recommendation, this was a big one. So for your letters of recommendation, all colleges require different numbers. Some of them have a limit, some of them don't. But you want to make sure, a lot of the colleges want teachers from your junior or your senior year in high school. I didn't necessarily do that 100% because I went to a public school my freshman year, and then I did Branson starting my sophomore year. And so I got one of my public school teachers to write a letter just because they had a different experience with me than my Branson teachers. And then I got 3 Branson teachers for letters of recommendation. And then I also take classes at our community college. So then I got two of my college teachers to write letters as well. So that way it gave a more well-rounded look at what kind of student I was, from being in a traditional high school to an online high school to a college. So if you have something similar, if you did something similar to what I did, and you maybe weren't at Branson all your high school years, then you can pull from your freshman year or your sophomore year letters from teachers. But make sure you do include some junior, senior year teachers. And they don't have to be teachers, because I submitted letters of recommendations from some past employers, from my horseback riding trainer. My dad submitted a letter of recommendation to a couple colleges. Like, you can get a lot of different people to submit letters of recommendation, but they do require the teachers. And then I made a little checklist, because you want to make sure that you give your teachers plenty of time. There's a lot of students that are going to be applying for colleges, and so that means they're probably going to be writing quite a few letters of recommendation, and you don't want them to be slammed like at the end. So a month, a couple weeks beforehand, just make sure you give them a good heads up. Have a resume ready. That was one thing every single one of my teachers asked for, was a resume of what I've done up until then. And so have a resume. You can also submit your resume on most of your college applications. So that's just another way to sneak in a bunch of stuff that you've done. Maybe employment is something that they don't really ask about on your applications, but if you've done some cool internships, or you've worked somewhere for a long time and you've kind of worked your way up the ranks or anything like that, you're going to want colleges to know about that. So a resume is a great way for them to see that. And have an idea of what you want your teachers to say about you. You can't tell them what to think about you, but if you want them to maybe highlight what kind of student you are, or how you balance your extracurriculars with your school life and things like that. Maybe you were struggling in their class and then you worked really hard and spent a lot of extra time to figure out this subject matter. Maybe you want them to highlight something like that. So even though you can't write the letter for them, sometimes they want to know kind of where you want them to, what direction you want them to take the letter. And then send your recommenders thank you letters, because it really does, they're taking the time to write you these letters of recommendation for your colleges. And it's important to have those letters of recommendation. So let them know you appreciate it. And then keep them updated about the status of your application, because usually these are going to be teachers that you're really close with and that you have a relationship with. So they probably want to know what colleges you're getting into, and it's always nice to just have a little update. I think that's what I have for letters of recommendation. And then my final note for applying for colleges is ask for help. I got a lot of help on my college applications, and the thing is you have no idea. Like, I did a lot of research before I did my college applications, and nothing prepared me for them, because they're not anything you've ever done before. They're very time intensive, so you can't get them done in a day. So don't try. But ask your parents, teachers. Your teachers, they've seen a lot more kids submit and apply for colleges, so they probably have a pretty good idea of what you're doing. Friends, older friends that have already applied, coaches, but I think that says couches, so I'm sorry about that. Ask some of your mentors. You can call the colleges. I called a bunch of the colleges that I was applying to double check on things on the application, just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. And they have their Office of Admissions. That's what they're there for. They're there to help prospective students navigate their way through the application process. So there's a lot of resources out there. Casey or I, if you guys have any questions on your personal essays, on your application process, on schools, anything like that, I'd be happy to help. You can send me an email. I think you can email Mrs. Nedved and she can get you in contact with me, because I'd love to help. And it's an important and stressful part of your high school experience, and you're not going to have all the answers, that's for sure, but there's people out there that'll help you find them. So don't think that you're totally alone when you're applying for your colleges. And that's what I have for applying for colleges. And then I think Casey's going to do scholarships, which is also super important.
Awesome. Thank you, Greta. That had a ton of great information in it. Casey, I'll go ahead and change the screen over to you. In the meantime, I did a couple questions come in. Jaden, I see your hand is up. I know you asked a question. Do you want me to unmute you? Just go ahead and answer in the questions box. As far as here, okay, I'll go ahead. All right, Jaden, what's your question?
So I was wondering, Greta, where did you find all these requirements that you needed to do, like the essay and everything? Who told you that you needed to do them?
So that was all on the Common App. After I decided what colleges I was going to apply to, I logged into the Common App and added them as colleges, and then you have to go into each college's application and find what essays you need to write and that kind of stuff. Most colleges require a personal essay, and then not all of them will require supplement essays. Most of the ones I applied to did. But it's in the actual application for the colleges.
Yeah, I think if you would go to the website of any college you're looking at and looked at what it would take to apply, they'll list everything you need right there. This app business is wonderful. They did not have that around when I was applying for colleges 10 years ago, that you can do it all in one place, but they did have online stuff. And so even if you don't have, that app yet, you're not that far. If you just go to that website of the college you're looking at, they'll certainly list it. Awesome.
Okay.
I have another question. What's the difference between university and college?
Okay, so a university is a collection of different colleges, where like a college, you can have like the College of Arts and Science or like the College of Engineering, so it's a specific focus, whereas like a university like Colorado State University has like a veterinary school and a business school, and they're all within that same university. So a college is just more specialized.
Awesome. I did not know that. I use them interchangeably, so if you hear me, I will just use them interchangeably, but you're exactly right, Greta. That's a great answer. Also, how old do you have to be to go to college?
How what?
How old do you have to be to go to college is a question we got.
Usually like 18, when you need to graduate high school, I guess. So whenever you graduate high school, then you can apply to colleges. And then, but through Branson, you can start taking college classes as early, I think, as your sophomore year, as long as you have A's and B's in all your classes. I think that's the rule. So you can start taking college classes before you graduate high school, but you won't actually go to college until you've graduated high school.
Yep, exactly. I was just going to mention that. That's the concurrent enrollment programs. That's a whole nother process. It's not nearly as intense as actually applying for colleges. Our counselors handle a lot of that, but if that is something you're interested in, like I said, concurrent enrollment is a whole nother kit and caboodle, and we can talk about that with your counselors. Question, Allison, I was asking Greta, what are you going to school for?
I'm going to go to school to study political science, and then I think I'm going to get my law degree.
Awesome. Jaden, do you have another question? Go ahead.
So I just wanted to add on to the question about how old you have to be. So I had a friend that went to college in his sophomore year, and I was told earlier this year when me and my counselor talked about doing college classes that you at least have to get A's and B's the semester before, or starting the semester before you go to college, and then you have to continue to get those A's and B's till you're done with your college classes.
Yeah, and that's for Brent.
Yeah, go ahead, Greta.
Oh, yeah, so like that's not necessarily like you're going to college, but you're still in high school. So those classes count for high school and college credits, so they're still counting towards your college graduation. So you're not technically in college yet, and then you do have to maintain those A's and B's to stay in the concurrent enrollment through Branson. But once you get into college, like once you graduate high school and get into college, you don't have to get A's and B's to stay in college.
Exactly. And like Greta said, I don't think to actually full-time attend college, I don't think there is an age restriction. It's just that you need to have a high school diploma. Awesome. All right, let's turn over to Casey. Just to kind of give you guys a heads up, I do have a 2 o'clock DI. So we're right at 1:30. We're doing great. But just so that we all know, if I do have to cut questions short, I got a half hour left. But awesome. Casey, it is all you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Greta, for doing colleges. You have a lot more expertise on colleges than I do. So it worked out awesome that we were paired up together because it looks like our strengths kind of offset each other. So that was great. I did want to kind of echo what Greta said, and if you guys have any extra questions, especially since we might run out of time, make sure you email Mrs. Nedved and she'll get you into contact with us. And it sounds like both of us would really love to help you guys out. So that's part of the perks of doing the mentor sessions. So I guess let's jump right in then if we're getting close on time. Scholarships that I have applied for. I have applied for a lot of scholarships, just like Greta applied for a lot of colleges. So something that's kind of a local deal, or at least throughout northeastern Colorado, is the NELCROP Historical Essay Contest. I've been able to enter that all 4 years of high school. It's for freshmen through seniors. And I actually won it my freshman year, which I was not expecting, but that was a pretty neat experience. You get to pick any essay topic that you want, and that has to do with history in Colorado. And you write the essay based upon the specifications on the website. And it usually, you enter by school. On the side here, if you guys want to look at it, I put up what counties and what school districts are eligible from NELCROPs. As long as you live inside those counties when you're attending Branson, if you enter as a homeschooled student, they will take the top 2 homeschooled students and put them in with everybody else. So that's kind of a little way of getting into that. That's a pretty neat thing to apply for. And it's $2,000 if you win the essay contest. And then there's also an art contest that goes with that. Okay, so moving on. I entered a teen travel writing scholarship last summer. That was kind of an early start of my scholarship process, and I just wanted to test out, I guess, how my essay was going. And I actually ended up doing fairly well. I ended up being a runner-up. This is a national deal, and there was a couple thousand kids in this, and then I ended up being one of the runner-ups. They did a top 3 deal where they each got $1,000 or less, and then I was like 4th or 5th in there. So that was pretty neat. And then I applied for PEO, which is like a teachers association. I think it stands for like philanthropic educational organization or something like that. I don't know quite the whole thing, but I'll talk about this stuff more later. But I also applied for an Elks scholarship, Coca-Cola scholarship, General Electric and Reagan, a high school rodeo scholarship through their sponsor Cinch, some things through rural electric cooperatives, and what was the last one? I think, the Better Scholarship, which I actually ended up having to turn down because I'm not going to be going to college in state, but got fairly far in that. So I was excited about that until I realized I wanted to go to college elsewhere, but that was pretty neat too. So the Better Scholarship is a really great one to apply for if you know that you're going to go to college in Colorado. General tips for applying to scholarships. Use your activities, scholarship search websites, and scholarships that family members know of to find scholarships to apply for. So on family members and friends and searching for scholarships that way, like the PEO scholarship, I knew about that because my grandmother is in PEO, and so don't really know where I'm at on that process on how that will end up. That scholarship extends out till April, so I'm not quite sure, but it's good to ask your family members who are parts of different organizations if they have anything that you might qualify for a scholarship for, just because they're in that organization, which is pretty neat. Elks, on the side note, the Elks scholarships are really great. They have a lot of high value scholarships, and you do not have to have a family member in those associations to be able to apply for those. Scholarship search websites are good. I've found the General Electric Reagan that way. And activities, like I mentioned, that I applied for a rodeo scholarship. There's scholarships through 4-H, which I've also planning on applying for, and there's all sorts of different ways to find scholarships. Echoing Greta here, find some really good recommendations. Some of them that I chose to do were Branson teachers, so Mrs. Nedved, I actually got to write a recommendation for me, and hers was great. I also got a college teacher from Northeastern Junior College, where I'm taking concurrent classes, Mrs. Wetherill, to write me one. She's kind of known me most of my life since I am from the local area, and so it was good for her to see me as both a college student and as somebody that she's seen grow up. Nick here, I'm going to blank on his last name right now, but I volunteer once a week at the Sterling Regional Med Center, which is our local hospital. And so he is the head physical therapy director, and I want to be a physical therapist, so I'm volunteering in that wing. And so he has seen a lot of what I've done with volunteering there and all that I've learned. And so he has written a really great recommendation for me in the past about just things that I have been able to do through that, and speaking to the fact that he thinks I'll go far in my future plans, which is kind of what scholarships want to see. They want to see somebody who they think is going to go impact others in the future. So definitely follow directions. Just like Greta said, you can look up usually on the website for scholarships or colleges what exactly they want. You got to make sure that you send in a resume if they want a resume, or you fill out a form if they want a form. A lot of them are very specific about that because they have people who try to trade out things, and just do what they ask you, even though sometimes people want to send in headshots or something and they're not asked for. A lot of times on these bigger scholarships that will hurt you, they'll tell you not to do that because they'll get so many people trying to send extra things in, and they just want to see what they asked for. Create online resumes, like Greta said, your recommendations. People who write those recommendations are going to want to see those resumes. Part of that would be using ICAP. I add that in down here too. That's a really great tool for making an online resume that you can share with all of your teachers and keep them up to date on what you're doing. But also with those online resumes is you can do a little bit of copying and pasting as you're going in through all these applications, because not all of them, some of them, but not all of them will be on websites like the Common App that Greta mentioned. There are scholarship websites like that, but a lot of them, a lot of scholarships are going to have very different applications. So you may not be able to do that. Make sure you save older applications. A lot of applications for scholarships, as you're getting towards the end of filling them out, or once you are getting ready to submit them, they will give you the option to save it as a PDF. So for one, save it as a PDF to keep it for later so that you can make sure that you're reusing the exact information that you used for other stuff if you thought it was really good. And you can also print them for review to make sure that you're not missing anything, didn't have any typos. That's a really great tool. As far as making resumes and stuff, you might sometimes want to do like I did. I'm a little bit old-fashioned and made a paper list. And along with that, organize flexibly. That's one of the reasons I made a paper list of stuff that I have done. So I did like list out my extracurricular activities, and I listed out some of my achievements and stuff like that, so that I can move it around to different categories, I guess, because sometimes they'll ask for volunteer activities separate from school activities, also separate from extracurricular activities. And based upon their specifications for each of those, you'll have to kind of sort everything that you've done into what they want to see. So make sure that you're prepared to offer either like a very, very short description, or just a title of what you've done that sounds good, or maybe even a paragraph on each thing, depending on how the application is set up. So I kind of focused with this then on essay tips, and you guys can feel free to ask me questions at the end if so we have some time on both applying and on the essays. But writing is definitely one of my favorite things to do throughout school. So English has always been one of my favorite subjects. So writing for me, I actually really liked the way that scholarships are set up in colleges for writing essays in kind of a reflective manner, like Greta said. So I wanted to give you guys some essay tips because that's more of my strong suit than the rest of it. As far as what I call like rigid scholarship essays, which is more what you'd feel like you're writing for a school assignment, if you have an assigned topic for a scholarship, pick something that interests you within the domain of that topic and then go from there. Make sure you do what they ask, but you can also write it in a little bit of a creative manner, or at least use something that interests you so that your essay doesn't sound dry because you don't like it. So an example for this would be the Rural Electric Association scholarships that I applied for, whether they're called the Morgan County or the Highline Basin. I kind of built a thesis here for my essay, and I put down here, it's a little bit of a mouthful, but I made a thesis and I went with it. So even though you're supposed to be specific, it's okay sometimes not to be too creative. Sometimes this was a slightly smaller essay contest, so it gotta kind of tailor your writing to your audience. But with this, it was okay not to be creative and try to stand out. It was best to answer what they wanted to hear about their cooperative communities, their companies, and to approach the essay that way. So as far as creative scholarship essay goes, I did a lot more of these. To me, they're a lot of fun, and then also a lot of bigger scholarships want creative essays. So I haven't reused my essays so much as I've repurposed my same topic. I do have one essay that I was able to reuse for a couple different scholarships, but then I also had to write several more, and I ended up using the same topic for most of them just because it is something that has impacted me so much. So one example on this page was the Elks Most Valuable Student Scholarship essay. So the topic was using one of the leadership roles or extracurricular activities you prioritized as being important to you. Describe what impact it had on you, what you contributed, what you learned about yourself, and how it influenced your plans for the future. So this seemed like a really big thing, but they only give you about 300 words. So you have to, I guess, try to cram the idea of how much of an impact it had on you into your essay without trying to answer every little piece. So one big thing for me is I would like to, well, I'm planning on becoming a physical therapist, and I would like to do medical missions in the future. And so I have been on a mission trip to India before, 2 summers ago, and I'm planning to go again this summer. And so I used things that I learned from my last India trip to explain how missions has impacted what I want to do for medical missions and has led to me choosing a career in the medical field. So for this essay, I talked about the impact that the experience of seeing people in India with health that was not treated and could not be treated because they didn't have the money or the access to medical professionals really propelled me into wanting to become a physical therapist and to do medical missions. Here's some more creative scholarship essay examples. For the Betcher contest, I really liked how that one was laid out. Obviously, it's a pretty big scholarship competition. A lot of the ones I applied for, I did a mix of small ones and big ones. But for the Betcher, they have really well thought. Their application is very well thought out in how they staged everything. And I liked what they called their short answers or the mini essays. So for these, I used a couple different topics. I showed them a couple different aspects of my personality. I think for my bigger one, I did use India a little bit again, and then kind of mixed a variety of aspects of my life in there. So for this one, for short answer question 2, I was supposed to select my favorite service activity and describe why it was important to me and my community. So I chose the Sterling Regional Men's Center and things that I have done with that. So I talked about how I get to be with pediatric patients, like children, or I could be going what they call inpatient care upstairs in the hospital, or I could go help them walk a lady who's just fallen or somebody who's recovering from knee surgery. And going through all this, I described how this personally made me close to my community because I know a lot of these people who are in the hospital, or I suddenly build bonds with these people and then I see them in Walmart or something. I guess that was kind of the perk of being in a small community, but I was able to add in how being a volunteer made me closer knit to my community. So then for this one, I got to be really creative. For short answer question 3, it said, pick one thing you really enjoy and tell us why you love it. They left that wide open. So my mind kind of went crazy. And like Greta said, for choosing essays, I made a list of different ideas. And then I picked one that really excited me. I used the idea of being a travel junkie. I love to travel with my family to rodeos and then doing missions and everything else. And I talked about how I love travel to showcase, I guess, my personality and all that I've learned through traveling, whether it's how traveling can be bringing you closer to others or hardships. Hardships help you grow. I included a lot of different things in the essay, but I guess that's an example how you can take one topic in your life and use it to apply to a lot of different aspects of your personality and what you've been taught throughout your life. So one more creative scholarship essay example was from the My Family Travels Teen Travel Writing Scholarship. This was more of a blog format. The scholarship itself did not have an application. It was just writing a straight out essay blog for this. It was a company, if I can remember right, it's called Lonely Planet, I think. They do some stuff with like Animal Planet and National Geographic and other nature corporations. So like they've got TV channels and magazines and things like that. So I actually got to write a blog for this, and I was able to be descriptive about some of my India experience. And so that was pretty neat to kind of write a reflection on that. And I used kind of some symbolism actually that I got from a song. So just kind of using reflective things that you found throughout your life about Mother India and how I had always felt like I wanted to go to India. Like since I was 7, I wanted to go to India. And so I added in there that I'd wanted to go for nearly 10 years, and Mother India had called me, and I talked about how people had asked me basically, well, you're going to go to India, and if you go there once, then basically you're going to stop traveling. And I was hoping the entire time that no, I want to keep traveling. There's other places I want to go, but I'm going to want to go to India again. And so I kind of finished my essay out with the fact that I was going to go back to India one day, and that my love for traveling hadn't left just because I'd gotten to go there once. Oh, so one more, last example on the creative ones. For the Cinch Scholarship essay, this had to do with high school rodeo. So I actually took what my future career path is and applied it, or actually the other way around. I applied what rodeo has taught me to what my future career path is going to be. So I talked about how rodeo has prepared me for traveling and for caring for others and for being a hard worker. And so I kind of started out with an intro that kind of intrigues you, kind of throws you into something that you aren't sure what you're talking about at first and needs more clarification, and then finished it out with rodeo shaping me. And because of who it helped make me into, I know that I'm going to be prepared for missions and anything else that I might choose to do in my life. And so that kind of brought the two halves of my world together, I guess. So bragging essay tips, I got this from a scholarship application book that a friend shared with me, like Greta said, asking for help from like older friends who have been through this process before. But they called it the bragging essay when they ask you to tell more about yourself and all of the different leadership roles that you have had, instead of just writing a reflection essay. And so for this one, instead of a creative opening, the book explained that it's better to have a strong opening that kind of explains you in a nutshell. But you also don't want to tell everything about yourself all at once and make it too broad. You kind of want to advocate 1 or 2 ideas about yourself and then go from there showing the other dimensions within those things, if that makes sense. So like if you're sciencey or love to serve or musical, show that, and maybe the fact that you like to lead or something else. Try to minimize your broad aspect of yourself and then showcase little things in there. That way they get the full scope of who you are without making your essay really, really long. Don't brag just for the sake of bragging, but when you're doing this, promote yourself with what you truly love to do. And so what they want to see more than anything isn't you saying, oh, I'm this amazing person. No, they want to see that you are just passionate about what you want to do. And that's kind of the point of the bragging, is the fact that you're just showing them what you love. And so when they see what you love, they know that you're going to go far in that area and that you're going to keep pursuing getting better and better. So this was an example of an essay that I reused for at least 3 of these, for the PEO and for my Betcher main essay and for the opening for my General Electric Reagan essay. I put that I spend most of my time either impacting others or studying. My every waking moment tends to be filled with an activity that either benefits those around me or makes me better equipped to serve them in the future. So that kind of condensed like all the different things that I do, whether it's 4-H or church or mission trips or rodeo or doing these mentor sessions or volunteering at the hospital. There's all sorts of different things, but the fact is that most of those things are service things, and that's what I love to do, is serve others. And so I got to put in that I like to serve others and I like to be a leader without explaining every little thing that I do in that first sentence. So here's the different prompts that this opening worked for, and this is actually in my last slide, so we can wrap it up after this and do some more questions. But I just wanted to kind of show you guys the different prompts that this opening here actually worked for several different ones. So for this one with the red font up top is actually the bigger essay for the Betcher this year, and so you got to pick from one of 3. My favorite one was the top one, so I chose that, and I actually had saved this and highlighted it. I evaluated a significant experience or achievement that has a special meaning to me. This one was for the PEO over here on the left hand. It said, briefly describe your career aspirations and higher education goals and share your inspirations. So my inspirations have been my background in agriculture and rodeo and my love of medical missions. And then over here in the right-hand corner, I was also able to use it for the fact that Ronald Reagan wanted to inspire and advocate others, so I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to make a positive difference. And so for all of these, even though these are very different prompts, I was able to kind of use the same essay because they all work towards the same goal. So hopefully that made the essay process a little bit more clear to you guys. Like Greta said, all of this does take time, but it's not so scary once you start breaking it down and start asking for help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Casey. That was a ton of great information. Have you heard back from any scholarships yet? Have you received any, or do you know any dollar amounts at this point?
I had just received an academic scholarship from the college that I'm going to go to. Other than that, I did the Nell Probst one my freshman year. I haven't heard back from as many so far. I have advanced in the Elks Most Valuable Student Scholarship. I think we're getting ready to go past the state level to national soon. I should find out in March if I get to do that. And then after the national level, there'll be a much smaller round of interviews, which would actually be in Chicago. So we'll see if I get that far. But Betcher, I got up to the interview round, and then they sent out an email saying, please let us know if you want to go to a different institution that's outside of Colorado. And so at that point in time, I declined it because I knew that I wanted to go to a college outside of Colorado.
Gotcha. I didn't know that was the one that you had to be in Colorado for. Well, excellent. Good luck with all of that. A couple quick questions came in. Where do you volunteer for physical therapy? Allie said she would like to become one and wanted to know what you would recommend.
It depends on where you live, but living in the community where I do, I found out that you are able to be a teen volunteer. They call you volunteens, but you can actually usually there's a volunteer coordinator at your local hospital, and you can call their number if you can find it online or find a connection to be able to talk to that person. And usually it takes like a letter of recommendation. They want to see your immunizations and things like that. And then they will actually give you a role within the hospital, whether it is physical therapy or if you want to be a nurse practitioner or a surgeon or something, they will find a way to get you in there and be able to see the different aspects of how a hospital works. Definitely just asking around for different options within your community of physical therapy centers or hospitals, because they're usually pretty happy to help you out and get you some experience.
And that's probably something that your counselor can help you with as well, at least get you started. If you're a freshman or sophomore, Miss Lyon is your counselor. If you're a junior or senior, Mrs. Ellingson. If you need help getting in touch with them, you can ask me and I can get you in touch with them or your homeroom teacher. But that is definitely an awesome resource for you. Also, when can you start applying for scholarships?
It depends on their specifications. Some scholarships, like I mentioned, the historical essay contest, are for freshmen through seniors. There's a lot of online ones that are also freshmen through senior. And then there's also ones that are reserved for just juniors and seniors or just seniors. And then there's also scholarships like once you are actually in college or working on your master's degree, there's categories for that too. But it depends on the scholarship, but a lot of them are just for juniors and seniors or just for seniors, but there's quite a broad range of time frames that you're allowed to apply for those.
Awesome. Jaden, I see you have a hand up. Go ahead.
So Casey, I wanted to ask you, what steps did you take, or like how did you figure out that you wanted to be a physical therapist, and what classes in college are you taking to be able to become a physical therapist?
Okay, that's a good question. I've known for a little while, I think since about junior high, that I was kind of interested in the medical field, but I didn't really know where. So actually through, and this is how this happens a lot, but through family members going through physical therapy or family members needing medical attention or things like that. Like my mom had to go through a little bit of physical therapy and got an ultrasound on her knee to like break up the tissue and so she can move it better for mobility purposes. And I thought that was absolutely amazing. And then I started talking to the physical therapist because we knew her pretty well. And I got to volunteer there for a little bit at her office. And then I moved on to the hospital. And a lot of it is just going and checking out different careers and seeing if you have the personality that fits with that, or if you really do want to do that. That way you aren't surprised once you get into college. And then as far as what I'm taking, right now, I've just been taking kind of general classes at Northeastern Junior College, getting my English out of the way and some lower level science classes like chemistry. And I think I also did like psychology and sociology for my major. Got those out of the way a little bit. That way I can transfer those. But next year, I'm going to go to California Baptist University, and I'm going to major in exercise science. So I'll be taking a lot more of biology and anatomy and physiology, and then some lower level math classes, but a lot of science. Did that help?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I hate to do it. These were wonderful presenters, great presentation, but I do have to wrap us up just because, like I said, I've got that 2 o'clock DI. But if you have any other questions, anything else you want to get addressed, just like both the girls offered, send them my way and I'll get you in touch with either Greta or Casey or both. And we'll make sure that you guys can get those questions answered. A huge thank you to Greta and Casey for presenting today, putting time and effort into showing us your process. I think it was so helpful. And I just can't encourage all of you who are attending enough, apply to colleges, apply to those scholarships. Nothing bad ever happens for just applying. It's a great use of your time, and who knows, in the end, you may come out with some money. So that's my kind of hint to you. Again, you do have extra credit in the class of your choice. Email that teacher and let them know you want to use it for attending today's mentor session. And lastly, if you have any sessions you would like to see, any topics you would like to have a session on, or you would like to present yourself and you think there's something that you would be an expert at presenting on, please get in touch with me. I am running out of ideas and I would like to continue our session. So any extra volunteering helps me out a ton. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will hopefully see you all next month at whatever we decide on for our session. Thanks for coming, and thanks, Greta and Casey.